says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you lusting is the one you're loving?
I'm gonna ask a fundamental question. What is Black culture? Like, I played a clip from Irv Gotti. He was on the Drink Champs talking about the time that he tried to entice Nas to go on a caravan through the hood of Baltimore with a Rolls Royce, Ferrari, and all kinds of fancy cars in tow, eating fried chicken, and I'm sure blasting Murder Inc. music. Ashanti was supposed to be on this caravan, and Nas said, nah, we could get killed. But I'm sure Nas, whose father is an amazing poet, and Nas, who grew up reading books, knowing things, which begs the question, how did Irv Gotti get in a position to control so much music? And there was some good music put out by Murder Inc. RULE, all of that. Ja Rule and Shanti, and before that, Lil Mo. Lil Mo, I think, was the best with the hook singing, and I think she didn't get enough credit. Shout out to her. But you think about these things as I do, and you look at who's pushing out the music and what is the message and what do we allow. I've talked on these airwaves about radio stations allowing the N-word freely to fly, and we'll draw the line at other slurs for other people that will get bleeped out in a minute, like All About the Benjamins or even a Michael Jackson tune. But we get to freely hear the N-word. How much of that is self-imposed or imposed on us that we accept, Don Calloway? How much of that is what we've accepted? Because we do know for a fact that 70% of that rap music was purchased and consumed primarily by white boys in the suburbs.
Okay, I want to get two quick little bars off about that Drink Champs episode so I can answer the larger question here. Number one, we must remember, lest we look too harshly upon that moment they were having, that they were young, wild, free, rich, and famous, and the oldest person in the room and wisest was 30 years old. They was trying to ball and have a good time. And dare I posit that if you collect that set in Bollywood or in rich white Hollywood or in Tech Valley, all of them are going to do something extraordinarily stupid on any given night, right? So they were being young and dumb and rich and free. So I would like to still be young at heart at some point. Anyway, I'll move on. I think the second thing is what Nas said, which is, what if we get killed? Because that to me suggests that it always has been and currently is extraordinarily dangerous by a unique demise of gunfire to be a rapper. Like, statistically, being one who identifies as a rapper is participatory in one of the most dangerous professions in the world, out there with ice divers and longshoremen. But it's just weird because rappers get killed on a legitimate basis for a variety of reasons. And that is just a crazy stat, but it shows that that's also not new to today. But more important,
but it is also baked in. Isn't it also kind of baked in? We're not talking about people falling off stages, yes, or dropping or dying of heart attacks and other. We're talking about the culture.
Young brothers getting killed by gunfire. Yes, right. But being okay, and I think that leads me to kind of the answer I have for the larger discussion that I think we both want to have, which is, you keep asking, is this what Black culture, and you've been asking me this question over the course of years, right? Mm-hmm. Is this Black culture? Is this really what we are and who we are? I think we have to remember that Black Americans are also Americans, right? Our predominant definitive trait is that we are American. And how much of, yes, we are African Americans, but we are distinctly different in mindset than the rest of our global African brethren and sistren and non-binary siblings, because we are infected by the ills of America, which are singular and unique throughout the world. Capitalism, our thirst for gun violence, and our thirst for our thirst to maintain the privileges that came from the original sin of American slavery and racism. I mean, and then you build in patriarchy and everything else. So in other words, Black people are deeply infected with all of the ills that come from these things, right? African Americans are deeply infected with all of these ills. So of course you see that in our rappers. Of course you see that in our rappers. Of course you see that in our athletes. Of course you see that in our famous and privileged. The great Damon Jones who is, I think, currently the ethicist for the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken. But he wrote a wonderful memoir called Anything That Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker. And he basically says black people, excuse me, straight black men are the white men of black people. So we have all those ills. We have all the patriarchy. We have all the capitalism. We have all the self-hate. We have all the confusion, right? That America has, right? We just have it with black skin. And it's not clear that if this world were flipped,
I don't agree with you.
Clear that if this world were flipped and black folks were in charge, it would be any more egalitarian. Now, I think
that part I agree with, only because we're infected with anti-blackness that has been drilled into us for 400 years. I feel like if left on our own devices, without but I don't know if we can have this conversation without acknowledging that we all are infected with anti-blackness that was baked into this system that we're a part of, which is beyond America, these borders, which is beyond the Americas, is a uniquely European export, right? This kind of anti-black imperialism, this anti-black, not just the system of enslavement, but what came after, the things that gave rise to the Nuremberg laws started here with our Jim Crow laws, which, if you think about, what we export, my question to us is always, what's our responsibility to keep it going, right? And so you can point to things, but even the things you point to in music that date back, 40, 50 years, because you're old enough to remember, still are baked into this anti-blackness that wasn't necessarily prevalent to our culture, right? Even those of us who you may have used the N-word 60, 50, 40, 50 years ago, wasn't the same as today with the cavalier way in which it's just thrown about and allowed to just pepper everything. If Martin Luther King used it, it was behind closed doors, and he was very clear about his audience and what inside, outside, like there was a very clear line of demarcation about what our responsibility was to each other and to the larger society and how we comport ourselves. I'm saying something today because I want to talk about how we create myth making in this country, how we've allowed, the preponderance of propaganda to be in our own psyche, to then perpetuate to them. I'm using a lot of P's, perpetuate out into the larger society. So we have, this clip I play, but it doesn't represent us, because even as I'm listening, I don't relate to that. But you are going to go into the hood where kids don't have anything, with a damn Ferrari and a Rolls Royce, and eat fried chicken and blast music. And you think that is what? Liberation? Because you want them to remember that? You want them to be up against something that they can only aspire to through which means? Drug dealing? Rapping? Basketball? But like, where the Don Calloway caravans coming through with the law degrees to show that beautiful backyard, and this is the path to get there. There needs to be equal and opposite, but there isn't. And we need to address that.
I think we got to get the great Ali Sadiq on the show, because he has a wonderful.
Again?
The
multiple times that he's been on.
My dear, my apologies.
Don't come on.
I love
he's co-hosted the show. What are we talking about? Last time he put his special out on YouTube, he was on the show. What are we doing, Don?
Let me rephrase. Can you please introduce
He'll be on this Friday when I'm not here. Okay, that's how much Ali Sadiq is part of this family. He'll be on. I won't be here. He will be here.
I am so honored to be connected to Ali Sadiq through you. I did not know. Please forgive me. The great Ali Sadiq just has this amazing riff on the 85 South show, which is I want to be on before I turn 50, which is he talks about, it's average. We look to celebrities to guide us, to lead us, to show us the way, when there's average brothers and sisters on the block who've been showing you the way, who've been showing you how to eat healthy, who've been showing you how to treat people with kindness and love and respect. But we have been affixed with celebrity, largely because that's where wealth is. And, again, I think that it is uniquely American to have this incredible combination of tolerance for violence plus adherence to the dollar over all other principles, right? At the expense of any type of ethics. And thus, of course, young black folks are as decadent as Michael Milliken and all the people who destroyed 401ks to sell junk bonds, right? They've certainly done much more broad, tangible, palpable societal damage than Irving Lorenzo Gotti Irving Lorenzo, who, by the way, why are you naming yourself after an Italian
A
gangster?
mob. This is my point. Murder Inc., Death Row. Except we don't get to do the Michael Milken or the Madoff. We don't get to do the Enrons, right? We don't get to do those
treat
things.
People the way we've seen powerful people treat people.
That's right.
And I think that's because we're American. Now, I think Afrobeats is having a moment, but all of us mess this thing up if we think it's just about listening to Burna Boy and getting these cool little beats for when you got your shorty over. No. This is about trying to get back to our African roots of community, of Kujichagulia, of Nia, the real principles that you memorize only the week after Christmas. But if we lived those principles, right, then we really wouldn't be as savage a people, as non-caring a people as we tend to be. And I think that's when you've got to shed the Americanness that's in us, because America can be a deadly, ugly place at times.
And of course, Everyday Kwan's on the Karen Hunter Show, and I think Laurie Daniel Favors as well. So we practice those every single day, even the days we're not here. But I brought this up because I believe that we have allowed for the infection to get us. Like, this is not germane to us, which is why I asked, what is Black culture? What is Black culture? So let's go to the phones. The number here is 866-801-8255. I don't think this is Black culture. I don't think Irv Gotti and, the kinds of rap music that was put out by those platforms, some of it represents Black culture. I think it represents a white lens of what they think or hope Black culture to be, period. D in Florida, that's what I think. What do you think, D? Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. You're on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hunter, I definitely agree with you 1,000%. I don't think that's our culture at all. I don't think that's what the founders of hip hop intended for the culture to be, for it to look like 50 years later. I come from Cedric houses with Coke LaRock, Funky 4+, One More, Keith, Africa Bambaataa.
Yes.
Where, Cool Herc come from. My mother went to that first party with Loretta, with his sister. They went to 82 together, but I don't think that was the culture. They were looking for something that brought unity, something that was a throughway, a bridge, a highway, if you will, an intersection between different types of music, different cultures. But as far as what Black is, I think that Black is beautiful. Black is excellent. Black is original and foundational. Black is the color that everything comes from, but it comes from no color. Black is power,
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Somebody in the Nubia chat had a very poignant question. Kendra said, is Don high? Kendra.
No. Yep. No, listen, I want to be very
Kendra Kendra wanted to know, is Don high today? I want
to be extremely clear here that I appreciate being challenged on this, and I don't think we're in different places. My concern is making sure that African Americans root ourselves in our African values more so than we do the American values of, frankly, secular religion, worship of totems, worship of things, and status and wealth, right? That's a very American value. And right now, I think that's predominant among African Americans, unfortunately. And you have to be intentional about finding those special Black yoga communities, or those Nubias online, right? Or the Karen Hunter. You have to be intentional to put yourself in community with like-minded Black people, because if you just out here every day as a Black person in the world, you get infected. And we have to find places where we are adhering to our African roots, even as African Americans. That's what I'm saying. I want to be clear. I'm not high.
Okay.
But I deeply appreciate being challenged on this.
All right. Well, I mean, and it's not to be challenged, just to be conscious. I think we just do things without thought, and it's natural to do that, because, it's work sometimes to ask yourself constantly, how have I been indoctrinated? Why do I believe the things that I believe? Why do I, practice the religions that I practice, or the things that I do? A lot of it's just tradition. But even in the tradition, we got to ask, how did it get here? How did this become our tradition? And with hip hop, we are all old enough to have been able to trace it back, to see where it left, the origin, which was, kind of this real power movement that came up from a community that was marginalized, right? To then become a commercial exploit pushed out in a very specific kind of way back to our children to digest or not digest in the era of, on the heels of the crack epidemic, et cetera. It's really insidious. That's what I'm actually saying. Like the Irv Gottis and the Suge Knights and all of those folk that rose up in this space, it was really insidious that they were able to rise up. I'm saying in a normal world that wouldn't have happened.
Yes, but this is what commercializing things is what America does. We've commercialized the Pride movement every June. We are in the infancy of the commercialization of Juneteenth. What will that look like 50 years from now? We have deeply commercialized Latino culture. And so anywhere where there is a paying consumer to be found, hip hop is no different. We will find a way to commercialize that culture. I do think that in a very unfortunate way, we commercialize the killing of young black men. We commercialize the hypersexualization of our women. We could have commercialized that hardcore boom bap, as my man Dalen Harris from Hempstead, Long Island says. We could have commercialized that hip hop sound without for the predominant of the amount of the dollars to have been created from derogatory images of black people. And I think that we can all agree on that. As having been a major sin of what we allowed hip hop to become as a culture. I do see a lot of consciousness now in taking it back, particularly artists and folks buying back their catalog. And that's an interesting concept, but we commercialize some really worst aspects of what we allowed ourselves to be looked at as.
Yes, but even that, you ride through Baltimore with cars worth over $1 million when you could have single-handedly bought a whole block in Baltimore with that same money and installed programs and things. To me, again, we haven't lost our way. We just, I feel like are victims of a society that wants to keep us in a particular place, and we got to break through. We got to be intentional. 866-801-8255. Don Calloway is here. Pat in DC wants to answer the question, and I'm gonna make an adjacent move after you, Pat, into another area that's the same though. Hi
there. You all are talking about a really important subject, and I understand, Karen, you say all the time that two things can be true, right? And so I understand what the brother is saying, because at the core, of course, we're neither black or white. So that's a political construct. I know people say social, but that's really a political construct. But to say that is to say that there's pathology in every culture, right? But I think what he's also saying is that the American experience is one of conflict with one's own identity, right? And all immigrants, whether we came here, on purpose, or whether we were stolen and brought here, once we get to America, there's a conflict with your identity. Ours is even overlaid with this political structure, right, of whiteness. And so there's even more, but we act out in very destructive ways that are contrary to who we are, especially as black people, because we know what that means as the American experience. But let me just say this as well. Some of this stuff is self-imposed, right? I just don't think there are enough of like-minded black people that are pushing back on these ideas of what culture is. And I'll just give you a quick example, because we're talking about these cars and all that. I live in a community. I was a DC resident for 30 years. I now live in Maryland. I'm a Prince George's County, Maryland resident now. I live in America that's considered in Maryland, and part of Maryland that's considered upper middle class. And waterfront community, beautiful waterfront community, but there are, and Prince George's by and large is more affluent for black people than probably a lot of places in America. But these people have good jobs, and I'm not going to say all people, but there is a culture even in that, and I'll say where I live, in National Harbor. People in Prince George's will know where it is. But there's a culture in Maryland specifically, and I don't know if it's all around, but I noticed that because I just moved here, that this car worship and the idea that, to state that you have arrived is a really nice, expensive car, and behavior, however crazy it is, to get people to notice you. So what happens in National Harbor? We got grown ask men, and I'll say it, who come through there, and I'm not talking about kids, who come through there in Rolls and Bentleys and all kinds of stuff. Windows rolled down, music as loud as like we're at an outside concert, cars dipping and dumping. And this happens because it's a very popular place. And it's the place where every peacock, every Black male peacock wants to come and show out. So can I say that this is the Black culture? I don't think so, because it's a lot of Black folk that live here don't appreciate that kind of activity, but feel like we're powerless. And I think generally when we have those people in our community that think and emulate the Black rap style or whatever it is, whatever accoutrement that says I'm successful and look at me, we don't have enough of us to push back and say, not here.
Sister Pat, I thank you. You blessed us, and thank you for all of your American identity stuff. I think that's fascinating, and you are spot on. But when we talk about the Peacock sessions, I just want to go back to like a very practical element of what I mean. I think I made my point earlier that we are far too American at times, and there's all the ugly elements of that. But also, like, yes, those young men are Black culture, and you know who else is Black culture? You and the seasoned saints who are wanting them to be quiet. Because Black folks have every element that you'll find in any community. And we are, it's gay Black folks, it's weird Black folks, it's nerdy Black folks, it's loud, young, stupid Black folks, it's Appalachian Black folks. You know what I mean? So, it's very difficult to say what is a Black culture, because we have all of the things that any other folks have.
But I think she's speaking to a pathology, the church that I used to attend, but she's speaking to a pathology that she's speaking to a pathology in a country, in a world that doesn't see Black men in particular as valuable, right? Even though our most successful Black folk are Black men, even though we'll always talk about Black women with degrees, we don't necessarily talk about all of the Black millionaire and billionaires that are mostly men. And I can name 2 Black women, Ursula Burns and Oprah Winfrey, off the top of my head, but I can probably name about a dozen Black men who are billionaires. And maybe Pat McGrath, but she's from Great Britain. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted. But what she's talking about, as I'm hearing her, and I've seen this with the, Myrtle Beach and the motorcycles, and there is a sense of, if you're not going to validate me, I'm going to validate myself. And since I've been conditioned to validate myself through things, through commercial, through these, consumer products, and having a Rolls Royce and a Bentley says that I have a certain amount of money, because not everyone can get one of these cars, to ride through town is a peacock moment in a world that doesn't validate your existence. So, we have to even understand that. Why do I need this car? Why do I need this particular thing that people can look at and see me as valid, as valuable? And I'm not going to wag my finger, because damn it, get what you like. I love cars. Let me just say I'm a car person. I don't get cars for anybody other than myself, but I'm now thinking that I need to tone down, because I actually don't want to be seen, but I like fast cars. I do. So some of that could be that too. I don't know if it's culture, but.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one